Recently, a man who was a borderline atheist called me. He had an extremely skeptical nature. And he asked me, how do I know that Vedanta philosophy is true? How do I know that it is not just another philosophy which mankind has dreamed of? How do I know that what Swami Vivekananda has written or what Sri Ramakrishna has said is true? Because I tried to meditate and I tried to follow Raj Yoga and I had no spiritual experiences. So, how do I know that Swami Vivekananda is not brainwashing me? Because if I start reading his books, at some point I'll start believing what he's saying without having any proof of it myself. And then this man also said that even though I want spiritual experiences, how do I know that the spiritual experience that I'll have is true? How do I know that I'm not hallucinating? So he was going round and round in circles trying to figure out how to test and how to verify for himself the proof of these spiritual teachings. Now, before I dive into my answer, I would like to explain what Vedanta philosophy means. See, the term Vedanta is the name given to the highest spiritual teachings which are found in the Vedas. The Vedas are the central books of Hinduism. One cannot be a Hindu if one does not believe in the Vedas. So, in the Vedas, there are two sections. One is the Karma Kand and one is the Gyan Kand. It is the Gyan Kand which is known as Vedanta or the knowledge portion. And the word Vedanta means Veda Anta, meaning that it is the end of the Vedas. And by end, it is not meant that it is the end of the physical book of the Vedas, like the Vedanta teachings are found in the last few chapters of the Vedas. That's not what is meant. What is meant is that in the pursuit of spiritual knowledge, the highest knowledge has been gained, knowing which everything else can be explained. So that is the meaning of Vedanta. That is the end of the knowledge. After that, you know everything. Okay, if you have experienced these truths, you know everything. Now, Vedanta is not something that the rishis dreamed up of. Okay, it's not something that comes from the mind. It comes from direct perception of truth, of the reality which underlies this universe. Okay, so that is the meaning of Vedanta. Now, it is Vedanta which forms the backbone of Hinduism. All the texts of Hinduism, whether they are the Tantras, whether they are the Ramayana or the Mahabharata or the Puranas or the Bhagavad Gita, they all contain the same teachings of Vedanta. Even the Tantras, sometimes people say the Tantras are separate. They say the same thing, okay? They have the same realizations which are found in the Vedas. Okay, now if you look at the rituals and festivals, the pujas, the yagyas of Hinduism, the aim of it all is to introduce these spiritual teachings to the beginner. That is their aim, and also to tell you that, listen, you don't need to have a blind faith in them. You don't need to just believe. Just because a rishi experienced certain realities, you don't need to believe. You need to actually experience them yourself. So the rituals and customs of Hinduism are, you can think of them as the nursery for a beginner. They form the nursery, the kindergarten for the beginner, and they introduce the beginner to the concepts of spirituality which the rishis witnessed in their states of consciousness. And the goal is that once you understand the concepts, once you graduate from kindergarten and you progress in meditation, in yoga, you should be able to experience these realities yourself. That is the goal. You experience the truth yourself. So this man definitely asked a very pertinent question. So let us see what is its answer. Now, in order to test out the truth of the spiritual teachings of Swami Vivekananda or of the Vedas themselves, because Swami Vivekananda taught nothing but Vedanta. He taught everything that was present in our scriptures. And he taught not just from an intellectual point of view, but from his own personal experiences. He was a God-realized sage. So he spoke from experience. He had verified the truth of the teachings of the Vedas. Now, if we want to verify the truths of these teachings, we don't need any spiritual experiences, okay? Spiritual experiences are not at all needed. You can take the teachings and apply them in your day-to-day life and verify for yourself whether they are true or not. I'll give you a very easy and practical example to explain this. See, it is mango season right now, and in my building at the gate, there is a beautiful mango tree and it is laden with mangoes. Now, if I want to pluck any of the mangoes, I can just reach out my hand and pluck the ones that are hanging low. The low hanging fruit I can easily pluck and taste for myself. The higher fruit, if I want to reach the fruit at the top of the tree, then obviously I'll have to make an instrument with which I can pluck those mangoes. I'll have to get a bamboo pole, I'll have to attach a net to it, a knife to it, and then I will have to skillfully pluck all those mangoes. I may even have to climb up some of the tree branches to get at the mangoes hanging at the very top of the tree. Okay, so spiritual experiences are like mangoes that are hanging higher up the tree. You cannot reach at them without cultivating the instrument of the mind. You can keep on meditating as long as you want, but if you have not developed the mind, if you have not purified the mind, the word is chitta shuddhi. One has to purify the mind. One has to practice truthfulness, sincerity, calmness, equanimity of mind, fearlessness. Unless these qualities are developed in the mind, one cannot attain to higher spiritual experiences. And the other thing that is needed, which is very, very important, is shraddha. Faith, not a faith, but a conviction, a very strong belief in God and Guru. Okay, because with shraddha, you can, shraddha is like your muscles in your leg and in your hands. You can really climb up the tree and hold on to the pole and pluck a lot of mangoes. So shraddha gives you a push up, a very good push up. And without shraddha, it's very difficult to progress on the spiritual path. So if you're a person like this guy who called me, who's very skeptical, his mind is in a great deal of turmoil. There is no calmness in the mind. There is no quality of peace in the mind. And more importantly, he was totally lacking in shraddha. He was so suspicious of Swami Vivekananda and his teachings that he did not have the instrument of his mind prepared to experience spiritual truths. Okay, it may be that the divine is gracious and through an act of divine grace he can get a spiritual experience. That possibility exists, but barring that possibility, if you're working on your own self effort and you're trying to ascend to a higher state of consciousness, then you do need to prepare the instrument of your mind adequately. Without it, you cannot attain success in meditation or have any spiritual experiences. So, Sri Aurobindo himself has explained this. He has said that it is not possible to make a foundation in yoga if the mind is restless. Like this person's mind was very restless. He was going round and round in circles. He was full of skepticism, of ignorance. He had no clarity of thought, or he had no shraddha, no faith. So his mind was very restless. So such a mind cannot attain to higher spiritual truths. So the first aim is to open to a higher spiritual consciousness, and for this, a quiet mind is needed. So if you want spiritual experiences, you need to ascend to a higher consciousness. You need to make your mind calm. Okay, calm. I'll explain this calmness of mind in the example that I'm going to give you. This calmness of mind has to be cultivated if we want spiritual experiences, okay? But in order to develop this calmness of mind, we can apply the most practical teachings of Vedanta. Vedanta is very practical, and you can apply all the teachings of Vedanta literally in your day-to-day life and verify for yourself that these things are true. And if the low-hanging fruit tastes good, if the low-hanging fruit are sweet, as people say that, if somebody has never tasted a mango and if I tell them, oh, mango is really sweet and really delicious, that person will not believe unless they taste it. Okay, so go for the low hanging fruit. You don't need any spiritual experiences. Go for the low hanging fruit, and you can verify for yourself that the Gita is true, that the Vedanta, the Vedas are true, that the Puranas, the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, who all teach the same thing, they're true. Okay, we can verify this for ourselves. And the way to do it is, I'll tell you through a story in my own life. I've verified these teachings practically in my own life, and you too can verify them for yourself. Okay, so let me tell you my story in which I applied the Samta teaching of the Gita. The Samta teaching of the Gita says that whether there is joy or sorrow in your life, you must maintain equanimity of mind, a balanced perspective of the mind. And I came across this Samta teaching of the Gita by reading the writings of Sri Aurobindo. He has expounded on this teaching a great deal, and that is how I came across it. And believe me, it has saved my life. Honestly, the work that I do, I have this other life in which I take care of some stray cats. And in that work, this Samta teaching of the Gita has literally allowed me to remain sane and to function and to continue to do my seva for these stray animals. So, you see, in India, I mean, if you're watching this from the United States, you may not understand this, but in India, there are a lot of stray animals, and we don't have any animal organizations that take care of them. So these animals are just roaming around. They're roaming around my building, they're on the road, in the streets, and their situation is always very bad. First of all, they suffer from hunger. And secondly, the biggest danger, at least for these stray cats that I take care of, is that they can get run over by any vehicle passing. So many of the cats that I've taken care of have run over. And cats breed very fast, So over the last 7 to 8 years, I have taken care of about 20 cats. And out of these 20-25 cats, only 60% of them have survived. The other 40% of them have died. And of those 40%, half of them have at least died because they met with accidents. So these cats, right now there are about 10 of them. So these cats live at the bottom of my compound. I tried over the years to get some of these cats adopted, but in India, cat adoption is very weak. Like I could get only 3 or 4 cats adopted because most people like, Persian cats or cats with a very nice pedigree breed, and they don't want these, the Indian breed cats which just look normal, they don't look exotic, so they don't want them. And I also live in a small apartment, so I can't keep these cats in my house. I have an aged mother, and my dad is also aged, and my mom suffers from asthma, so I can't keep like 10 cats in my apartment. It's not even possible. So they had to be left down. All these cats, I mean, I had no choice. I had to leave them down, and they were exposed to this danger of getting run over by vehicles. And one of these kittens that I was taking care of, it was about 6 or 7 months old, and what it did was that it went and sat behind a car, and this man was backing his car, and he ran over this kitten. And the sad part was that this man was aware that he ran over the kitten, but he didn't stop. He told other people in the building that he had run over the kitten, but he didn't stop to help it. So by the time I came to know that this kitten had been run over, it had died. Okay. And actually, the probability of its survival was already quite low because its whole face had been smashed. Its eyeball was bulging out, and it was, it literally, its head had got plastered into the ground. It was so bad, the accident. And at that moment, I remembered the Samta teaching of Sri Aurobindo. Let me tell you what he has said. Sri Aurobindo has said that the world is full of so many things which are horrible and terrible. Samta means that one should be able to look at them from a certain poise without being perplexed or moved. So what this means is that I, as a caretaker, I could have just turned my eyes away. I could have said, oh my God, this is so disgusting. This is so awful. I just can't bear to look at this kitten. I mean, my heart would have broken, literally, my heart was breaking, and I could do nothing to help this kitten. And secondly, this man had run away. He had left this kitten in this horrible, disfigured state. His brain was, popping out of his skull, and his eyes had popped out. It was horrific. It was a horrific sight. And suppose I had not cultivated samta, or equanimity of mind, this balanced state of mind. Suppose I had not cultivated and pulled my mind, reined in my mind, I would have also devolved into fear, into cowardice. I would have run away like this guy. I would have said, my God, this is too awful. I cannot look at it. I cannot do anything. I'll leave it to somebody else to clean up. I would let this kitten keep lying and let somebody else deal with his dead body. To explain this a little more, let me tell you another incident. I've studied science. So in my 11th and 12th standard, we used to have a biology lab. And in the lab, we had to dissect frogs. So our teacher would show us how to dissect the frog, and then we had to do it ourselves. Like, we were each given a frog, and we had to cut it open, and we had to see its heart beating. And of course, the frog was under anesthesia. They'd given it chloroform, but it was very bad. You had to check out its internal organs and things like that. And I had a girl in my class. As soon as my teacher cut open the frog, she fainted. She could not bear to see that sight, that horrific sight. She just could not bear it. So you see, that is not a balanced state of mind. A balanced state of mind can see the most horrific things and still do the right action, to do one's duty. So what was my duty at that point? You see, like this man, I could not leave that kitten unattended, or like I could not leave its dead body lying like that, because there are small children in my building, and they would come down to play, and they would see this kitten, and they were all very attached to these kittens. They all played with these kittens. And for a 4 or 5 year old child to see such a gruesome sight, that would totally destabilize their mind. You cannot expose children to such gruesome things. So I had to practice Samta. I had to also overcome my disgust, my repulsion, my revulsion. Like, I felt so horrible for this cat who had died, but I had to control all my emotions. I had to scrape off its dead body and its brain and its eyeball, and then I had to go and bury it. So you see, I understood at that time the importance of samta, of a balanced state of mind. I could not have done my duty towards, as an older person, towards these children in my building who would have suffered from nightmares if they had seen that sight. So, and the other thing it helped me to do was that if you maintain a balanced state of mind, you can then do the right thing at that moment. And also, I could continue to give care to other cats. So, in my work of doing karma yoga for these cats, the Samta teachings of the Gita have been such a boon. Every time I feel like, I cannot go on further, every time I meet with these kinds of horrible things, horrible sights that I have to see, because this is not the only cat that got run over. I had another case where there was this cat that I was taking care of, and he had wandered towards our gate. And what happened was that a motorcycle hit him, and it hit him so badly that his hip bone got completely fractured. Uh, and at that time, I didn't know what had happened. So I was called, and what I saw was that this cat was laying prone on the ground, and from his anus, there was so much blood spurting out. It was like a river of blood. Now, if I hadn't cultivated Samta, if I was like this girl in my school, in my college, I too would have fainted. I would have said, my God, what am I going to do? I would have gone into some kind of anxiety or panic attack. So then I could not have helped that cat. Okay. Now, this is one cat I managed to save because I maintained a calm and balanced state of mind in that very difficult moment. In that moment when the blood was really gushing out of him, honestly, I thought he would die. Still, I dialed the doctor. And luckily, there was a doctor who did house visits and he could come immediately. Normally, they don't come so quickly, but he could come. And so he came within half an hour and he gave him an injection and to stop his bleeding, to coagulate his blood. And then I got him x-rayed and started his treatment. Honestly, I did not think he would survive, but it was only because this doctor stemmed the flow of his blood that he didn't lose that much blood, and he was able to pull through. It took him 1 month, or I think maybe 2 months, to heal from that fracture. His whole hip joint, where the socket of the hip, this part, uh, where the socket of the hip connects, this whole thing had got shattered. It was shattered into pieces, and his hip joint had come out like that. But this cat had such a tremendous willpower that it pulled through. And with cats, you can't even give them painkillers. I took him to the doctor, and the doctor said, "You cannot operate. This is not a situation where I can operate on Pulkit. So you'll just have to leave him in a room and just see what happens." And he had a very strong desire to live, and he pulled through. Okay, so you will see that in life, there are many ugly things, there are many horrible things, many difficulties that you have to go through. And in all difficulties, if we maintain samta, if we maintain calmness, equanimity of mind, poise, then we can do the right thing that is needed at that moment. If we devolve into, you can think of it as a hill, you can think of your mind as a hill, and there is a marble on the top. And when there is a push, a very bad problem, this marble will go down the hill very fast. It will just go into anxiety, it will go down the hill of worry, it will go down the hill of cowardice, it will go down the hill of panic attacks, it will go down the hill of nightmares. If you don't control your mind, you will not be able to do the right thing at any given point of time. So this is the importance of Samta, the Samta teaching of the Gita. We don't need any spiritual experiences to realize its value. I mean, you can see from my experience how valuable it has been for me. I have other people who assist me in this work, and they just lose it. They are so weak-minded that they cannot see blood coming out. They cannot see the cat in pain. They just cannot. Their mind freezes. The mind freezes, and they don't know what to do. you know so if you look at our doctors, I mean, sometimes I wonder how balanced their mind is. They definitely have conquered this aspect, to be able to see very disgusting things. Like, imagine if somebody gets their brains blown off. Like, I sometimes look at sometimes I've seen the JFK assassination. Everybody would have seen it on TV. And his brains were blown off, and his wife was trying to pick up those pieces. She literally climbed back to the back of the car, Jacqueline Kennedy, and she was trying to pick up it was so horrible. And now imagine the state of the doctor. Imagine such a person comes to the doctor, and imagine if the doctor faints, what is going to happen? So the doctor is not going to be able to do his dharma, his duty, the right thing at that moment if he chooses to faint. Neither will he help the patient survive, nor will he be able, to control his own anxiety and panic attacks if that is the state of their mind. So samta, equanimity of mind, is very, very crucial. And if you look at soldiers, if you look at doctors, if you look at all these frontline workers, all these nurses who have helped us in the times of COVID, they have this ability. They have developed some of it. They have this ability of samta, equanimity, not to panic in the worst of difficulties, not to give way to anxiety, not to get nightmares at night, not to keep on thinking of these horrible things that they have seen. If they've seen somebody with their brains blown off, the next day they can get up and go back and do the same job again. They can keep on seeing the same horrific scenes. Imagine what doctors go through. I have a deep respect for this kind of work that they're doing. It's really commendable. So let me just read out to you further from what Sri Aurobindo has said. He has said to remain quiet and firm in the will to go through, refusing to be disturbed or discouraged by difficulties or fluctuations. That is one of the first things to be learned in yoga. Yoga is control of mind. You cannot have spiritual experiences unless your mind is controlled. I was reading this story of Rani Lakshmi Bai, and it was just unbelievable. Like, it seems, this is what I read, that just before she died, she was having a battle with the British. This British guy was chasing her on his horse. She was on her, I think she was on her horse. And then finally, in their combat, what happened was that he cut off a part of her face, literally with his sword. He cut off a part of her face, but she still had the presence of mind. She did not cry out she did not give way to her pain. Imagine the degree of pain, but she still kept her mind focused on killing the enemy. And she did kill that guy. Even after half her head was cut off, she still killed that guy, because that was the battle. She was fighting for the freedom of India. And many people say that, these days there is a tendency to say India has founding fathers. They just copy whatever they read about the US. The US has founding fathers, but we have founding fathers and mothers. We cannot ignore the women like Rani Lakshmi Bai, who sacrificed their life to free India. She started the freedom struggle. Her one death inspired so many Indians. Swami Vivekananda has written about it, that she became this icon, this ideal that everybody followed, And why did she become the ideal? Because she had the Samta teachings of the Gita. She could apply the Samta teachings of the Gita in her actions. And so the value of Vedanta is in applying these teachings and making them practical. This is the teaching that Shri Krishna taught to Arjuna when he was in the battlefield and he saw his own relatives, he saw his own cousins, his friends, and he just panicked. He was like, I cannot kill them. I really cannot kill them. What am I going to do? How can I kill them? How will I be able to live after this? I cannot do this. And that is when Shri Krishna taught him Samta, equanimity of mind. Keep your mind balanced so that you can take the right decision. You, Arjun, need to fight this battle because the future of India is at stake. Sri Aurobindo has explained this. Sri Aurobindo himself was Sri Krishna. Okay? The way Sri Aurobindo has explained the Gita and the life of Sri Krishna, it is something phenomenal. Like, you'll be blown away. What Sri Aurobindo has said is that Sri Krishna told Arjun that, look, if you don't fight this battle, India will be lost. The India that we see today, the foundation of it was laid by Sri Krishna. And the way he laid the foundation was that he got rid of these corrupt and murderous people who were trying to gain control of the Pandava empire at that time. That was Duryodhana and his brothers. Duryodhana was a murderer. He tried to murder the Pandavas. He tried to burn them alive in a house. He molested Draupadi. Imagine the depravity of the mind of a person who would call a woman into, like, imagine dragging a woman into the Parliament of India where all these men are sitting, and imagine taking off her clothes. How horrible how disgusting of a person was he? He was a criminal. And so Sri Krishna wanted to get him out. You don't want such kind of people leading your country. At that time, India was in the hands of kings. There was no democracy. So you wanted always righteous kings, you wanted brave, courageous, a courageous lineage who could defend India, because India has always throughout its history been invaded from outside. Like that has been our history. People have invaded us, the Huns, the the people from Arabia, Alexander had come to India. So we've been invaded countless times, countless times. And when Shri Krishna put this brave and righteous lineage of warriors, they defended India from these invaders. They defended India and kept the Vedic Sanskriti alive, the teachings of the Vedas alive. That is the work they did for humanity. People do not understand what Sri Krishna has done, but if you read Sri Aurobindo, you'll understand the depth of his contribution. He has protected our civilization and he has protected these spiritual teachings. India is the nursery for these spiritual teachings. Even though most Indians don't understand these teachings, most Hindus don't understand these teachings, still there have always been in India people who have always revived these teachings. The avatars have come and they've always revived and re-explained and re-energized the land with these spiritual teachings. So we are the nursery of these spiritual teachings, and it is our responsibility to nurture them and to keep them safe for future generations of not just Indians but the whole world. Our goal of India is to spiritualize the world. We are not here to fight between Hindus and Muslims and Hindus and Christians, and we are not to do what other people do. Our role is much higher, and our role is to spread Vedantic spirituality to the whole world because it is so practical. You can see from my example that it is so practical. And when people adopt it, they will become more stable. You see, anxiety, depression, worry, stress, suicidal thoughts, these things are pervading the world because people are tending towards materialism. But in materialism, you lose the stability of your mind when you pursue materialism blindly. And so you need these spiritual teachings. So Vedanta is the mother philosophy. Under it, Christians can practice Christianity. If they take the support of Vedanta, they can become better Christians. They'll understand the Bible better. If the Muslims take the support of Vedanta, they'll understand the Quran better. Because it is only in India that you find this segment of rishis. They are like scientists. Like a lot of the science has been discovered by the West. There have been numerous scientists in the West. Like even in India, we don't have that many scientists. If you look at all the great discoveries that have been made in medicine, in physics, they are all like a lot, majority of them are Westerners, okay? And so we have taken their discoveries, we have accepted them because there is a benefit to us. There's a benefit to everyone from knowledge, from true knowledge, everybody benefits. So from the true knowledge of spiritual truths, everybody will benefit, okay? So our goal, our responsibility, the reason we are born in India at this time is to preserve these teachings in our actions. We can't just say, oh, we are Hindus and we love our Vedas. No, no, no. You have to preserve them in your actions. And after you preserve them in your actions, only then will somebody else follow them. They will say, okay, she has applied them, so I too can apply them. And if she has benefited, I too can benefit. That is why, actually, one of the reasons why yoga has spread so much in the world, the physical aspect of yoga, is because people can see, oh my God, this person practices yoga and she's so healthy. So I will also practice the physical techniques of yoga, all the poses of yoga. Even old people can maintain so much flexibility in their body because they're practicing yoga. Today, 90-year-old people are running marathons. Everybody is trying to be fit because they're learning from each other, So Vedanta is the physical aspect of yoga, is the fitness of the body is needed as a prerequisite for the fitness of the mind. But the world has not realized that even the mind has to be fit. They have not come to that realization yet. and the mind gets imbalanced very quickly. Life is very much full of terrible difficulties. I mean, my life has only been full of problems. I don't see, there have been, times when things have been smooth, but I think it's largely, I would say, filled with difficulties. But I don't mind that because I read these teachings and I know that these difficulties have come to make me strong. And I know that I have a deep faith in my gurus and I know they help me. So I have managed to survive these difficulties in a balanced way. I've been able to do my duty towards these animals that I take care of without, going into anxiety, depression, nightmares, without crying profusely because one of these kittens has died. I've been able to control my mind and prevent it from going down these tracks. It's very easy for the mind to just flow in these directions, and you really have to pull it back. That pulling back comes from practice and from understanding these teachings. Okay, so once you've created Samta in your mind, Sri Aurobindo himself has said that then you have created in your mind the ground for higher spiritual experiences. So they'll come next. So the way to develop faith in Vedanta is to apply its teachings in your life. And once you apply the teachings, you'll realize their value and you'll say, yeah, Swami Vivekananda was right. He's right. He's right when he said that. So that is how one progresses and that is how one develops faith in one's guru. Today we live in a rational age, so it's difficult to develop faith. But faith comes, first you have to read, then you have to practice, you have to apply the teachings, and then you can experience their benefit, their sweetness, their fragrance. You can see how much good and stability they've brought to your life. My life has been transformed by this one Samta teaching that Sri Aurobindo has explained. And I have such a depth of gratitude to him. He has really, that one line that he wrote has changed the life of me, who has come so many years after he has left the body. He's still taking care of me. Still, he has left these teachings for people like us. Okay, so please read the spiritual books. Read spiritual books. If you're a beginner, read spiritual books and read the right books. You can't just read anybody's books. A lot of people opine on spirituality, but they hardly understand it. If you want to understand spirituality, you have to go to the source, to the subject matter expert. And the gurus that I represent on the spiritual bee are some of these subject matter experts. So you should definitely read their books. Then your basics will be clear. And if you read Swami Vivekananda, there are numerous teachings, I'll not detail them in this video, which if you apply in practice, you will see how much better your life is. How much better your life is. I mean, whenever I'm faced with difficulties, I always run to these books because I know that my friends and family members cannot give me the answer that these books can. The kind of answer that Sri Aurobindo can give to my problems, nobody else can give me that solution. So I always run to their books. I read Sri Aurobindo, I read Swami Vivekananda, I read Pandit Sri Ram Sharma Acharya, Swami Shivananda, I read Paramhans Yogananda, I read Shraddha Ma's teachings, I read Maharishi Ramana. And these are the gurus who explain Vedanta, the highest teachings of the Vedas, the highest spiritual truths. They explain that, okay? So try to read these books. So I hope that this video has been helpful to you and we'll meet again soon in another one. Take care. Goodbye.